Well, I'm joined now by Mark Wallace, the former US ambassador to the UN and chief executive of a new organisation called the Counter-Extremism Project. Its aim is to expose those funding extremist organisations like IS. Mark Wallace, good evening to you. Thanks very much for talking to us. We were just discussing cutting off the funding networks for IS. Is enough being done about that?
Thanks for having me. I was listening intently, and I think Alistair did a very good job of describing all the levers of economic of influence and power that ISIS has developed. And I think the real question is that over the last, extremism isn't new. Extremist groups have been pursuing their agenda and their business for a long time, but modern extremist groups, the likes of ISIS, have done a better job harnessing the financial tools, both legal and illegal, to promote their agenda, raise money, support their activities, as well as advancing their narrative and ideology in mass communications, online, and in social media. And what Alistair described is very, very key. We have to literally peel away the onion of that ISIS economy, as well as other extremist groups, to get to the rotten core. That means making every transaction harder, stopping potential purchasers of ISIS oil, shutting down their criminal enterprise, making sure we don't pay ransom, really choking ISIS off for money, because it will really, really adversely impact their activities. Can't be done alone and in isolation. I think we need to have an all items on the menu approach to ISIS, but certainly the financial and the counter-narrative are essential.
Is enough being done about that? Is enough being talked about it? Because when we hear President Obama setting out his strategy, for example, we hear about the military strategy, don't we?
I think that we are in catch-up mode right now. For years, extremists have been able to advance their agenda, refine sophisticated financial tools, as well as that that narrative that I've described. And I think that governments and NGOs have been really behind. One of the reasons we launched the Counter-Extremism Project today is to drive bipartisan, nonpartisan approach, international approach to making sure that no one does business with ISIS, none of the firms, charities, individuals out there that may be supporting ISIS and other extremist groups do not continue to do so, and literally peeling away that onion. So I think we are trying to catch up now. I think governments are trying to catch up. I'm here in New York, and right now the UN Security Council is grappling with ISIS as well. So I think we're all trying to catch up, and considering that it's certainly the greatest foreign policy challenge of our time, we need to catch up.
Yeah, as you say, the UN General Assembly taking place this week. What do you want to hear come out of that?
You know, there's been some discussion, I think it's actually happening right now, of a binding Security Council resolution on standardizing some of the laws, for example, related to foreign fighters, and having a binding resolution on member states to ensure that it's not easy for ISIS to recruit, members, and so that people can't use foreign passports, travel to Syria, and return on those foreign passports. I think that's a step in the right direction. To the extent that we can cut off or make it much harder for ISIS and other extremist groups to raise funds, to the extent we can counter the recruitment of jihadis in communities, frankly, in my country, in your country, and around the world, that's one of the very important hard soft power approaches to dealing with ISIS. Certainly does not exclude, taking the appropriate military action against ISIS and the like, but I think we need to do everything on the menu.
And what about boots on the ground? We just spoke to Tony Blair earlier in the programme, and he was saying that unless you have boots on the ground, you cannot counter IS.
I think it's an interesting debate. I mean, arguably, we already have boots on the ground. We've already deployed over 1,000 soldiers there, and it's as if our pilots that are in the air conducting these airstrikes, God forbid, if any one of them went down, we would certainly have boots on the ground to rescue them. So I think this is really more of a semantic distinction. I think that our military establishment here in the United States has made clear that ultimately, if we need to have boots on the ground, there will be boots on the ground, because the rise of this violent extremism is, regrettably, we are all forced to see in some of their videos, is something that we must deal with. It's literally a threat to all of our national security, international peace and stability, and we need to deal with it. So hopefully we won't have to get there, but I think all options need to be on the table.
And how important are regional partners in this?
I think it's really important. I think that right now we are potentially at a very historic moment. I've been talking to my colleagues here in New York today around the UNGA, and you can feel that regional partners that have historically been quiet or been leery to step up and talk or take action the tone is changing. It's as if there's an inflection point. So I think that we will potentially see a variety of friends, allies, and countries that have been hesitant to take action before, or even have perhaps been on the wrong side of the issue, realizing the dangers of the continued expansion of this violent extremism and join a broader coalition. So I think we are seeing something happening right now, and I'm optimistic about that. And the reality is if countries don't join us, they're going to be on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of a very hideous ideology.
Mark Wallace, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.